Hey everyone, it's Sarah and I'm making a short video about piano. I've been posting more and more piano videos lately, and some folks have asked me, how did you stick with piano? And related to that, how do I get my kid to stick with piano? So I thought I'd share a short video with some tips, and this is also informed by my background in learning and development. So I've been playing the piano for 31 years now, since I was 6. I love it. Obviously, if you've seen my videos, it's really fun, it's engaging, and I love it. But piano is kind of like golf. It's not for everybody. It's frustrating. You never make it to the end. You can play the same course, and day to day your performance really varies. You can't get it on the green. It's frustrating. So like golf, I think you have to be a little bit of a masochist or perfectionist to stick with the piano. So that brings me to the first two things that I would say before you even think about getting yourself, or probably from what I've heard from people, your kid, into piano. First thing is, whose idea is it anyway? And if you want your child to play the piano, then maybe you should learn to play the piano. And it's okay. Lots of people learn as adults. My dad actually learned as an adult. He went to the same teacher that I had. But if you're forcing your kid into playing the piano, don't do it. Most likely they're going to hate it. Even as a kid, when I went to recitals, I could tell who didn't want to be there, who didn't enjoy it, whose parents were just a little too excited. So if you love the piano, you can learn to play the piano, because it takes a lot of work. You really have to love it to stick with it. And so my hope would be that if your young person doesn't like piano, that you help them find the thing that they do like. In my household, we had a piano growing up already, and my brother and I play the piano, he doesn't, and the only difference is that I was interested and he wasn't. So my parents did not force either of us into it and followed our natural interests. So he was interested in other stuff, and he never learned to play where I was really excited to learn the piano. Which brings me to my second thing, which is just, how does your kid get motivated to learn? I'm probably not a good example. If I had $1 for every time my husband said you weren't a normal kid, I'd have a lot of dollars. I guess I was, by his estimation, an odd little kid. I was very interested in the piano. Like I said, we had one in the house, and my mom, I don't know if this was on purpose or she just didn't want kids banging on the piano. We were not allowed to mess around on the piano. Occasionally, I can remember before I took lessons, we were allowed to play nicely a few times with just a couple fingers, but we were never ever allowed to bang on the piano. And actually, I treat mine the same way. I don't want kids banging on it. It's not a toy, it's an instrument. So by the time I was old enough to take lessons, I was so excited. I was begging for lessons. So I was very motivated, and my personality style, once I get into something, I'm into it. So obviously I was a kid. Sometimes my mom would have to nag me to practice, but by and large, it just worked for me. School always worked for me. Lessons is pretty traditional learning format. That worked for me. But you might not have a kid like that, or you might not be wired like that. So figuring out what motivates you to learn and helping set them up to do that is really important. So whose idea is it anyway? And what do you know about your child's or your learning style, so you can set yourself up for success? So if your kid doesn't want to play, and if you don't understand how they're motivated, then I would not start this commitment. Okay, so some practical tips about what worked for me as a young person for piano. The first thing was just finding a really good teacher. And there's so many options now. There are more methodologies available than 31 years ago when I started. So find someone that works. My first teacher was a really good beginning teacher. She did a lot of music theory. She harped on posture. I just realized I shouldn't be sitting down more. She harped on posture, but she did lots of stickers and rewards, and there were fun things involved, fun for me. So that really worked for me. When I got older, that didn't work. So as I became a teenager, my teacher didn't allow us to play anything but classical music, and she picked all the music. And by the time I was in late middle school, I just thought I was interested in other things. So we had one teacher, we tried one that didn't work out, and then we had the other lady that I studied with. My mom would call her an odd duck, but She really helped me on the artistry side of things because I had good fundamentals. She let me pick my own music. So it was a good thing for me. I took lessons. The next question people ask me is, how long did you take lessons? I took lessons for about 11 years and then stopped shortly before I graduated from high school. That was enough for me. I don't need lessons. I just do everything on my own now, which works for me. I know some people still take lessons as adults. That's great. Whatever works for you. There's some amount of fluency, and I don't know how to quantify that. You should ask a music teacher, that you really need if you're going to keep it up, and from a lifelong perspective. So there's that aspect to it. Don't make your kid track their practice time. That absolutely kills the joy of playing. You want your kid to be drawn to the piano and to practice the piano. You might start that at the beginning, but just like how logging reading minutes has been proved to kill a child's spontaneous joy for reading, tracking your practice minutes is the same. I have many fond memories sitting in the piano teacher's driveway, and when I was that young, my mom would fill out the practice log, and then I was about 10 or 11, I would just make it up. And I'm actually really thankful that my mom wasn't super particular about it, because I did practice. And remember, with something like piano, at the end of the day, everyone in the room for the lesson will know if your child practiced. The child knows, the teacher can tell. There's a difference between, wow, you're just struggling and this is hard for you, compared to you didn't practice this at all. So there's that. Another thing I'd recommend is really focusing on the fundamentals, making sure that you think of music like a foreign language. So the things that helped me were music theory. My first teacher was very big on music theory. That helped me a lot. You know, your key signatures, your circle of fifths, all your Italian music words, so that you're musically fluent. That was really important. She did a lot of sight reading. I do a ton of sight reading now, and that really, really helped with my musical fluency. So getting, for sight reading, getting a book that's below your child's level is really important once they get to that point. And then to some degree, ear training. Some methodologies like Suzuki are very ear training based. I did not do Suzuki, but some amount of ear training just helps. Even things as basic as intervals, so your kid can hear the intervals, your kid can hear the different keys, things like that. You can make it fun. I'm sure there's apps and stuff like that. I just did it at a regular piano, so it wasn't that exciting. Another thing that technology makes available now is recording your kid from time to time, if you have their permission. It's funny because when I look back on videos of myself, even that I record now, it's so encouraging to see the progress, because day to day you don't notice it. Some days you have off days. So being able to have those positive, happy memories, and to be able to look back when you or your child is struggling, and you can say, wow, look how you were playing 6 months ago, and this piece is hard. If you keep working at it the way you did before, just imagine what's possible. So really encouraging their effort and reminding them where they've come, because again, day to day, it might not feel exciting. Let them pick their own music if you can. When they're really little, that's a little bit harder. But now just the amount of music available on the internet's pretty incredible, or you can go to the library. I spent lots of time in the music section at the Fort Vancouver Regional Library as a child, or going to an actual music store as long as it's safe. I love it. I still love going and picking out music. You might have to listen to a lot of Frozen or Hamilton or whatever. I don't know what the kids are into these days, but I think they feel a lot of joy when they can play something that they recognize, because if you go through a traditional methodology, so I went through Alfred, which I know is still a thing, the songs aren't necessarily for young people. So being able to do stuff that's fun, that you like, whether it's Star Wars or it doesn't really matter. They get really engaged when they can express some agency and choose. And that for me, I definitely went along with the flow when I was younger, but that, again, like I shared, was a big sticking point for me. Just encouraging practice without nagging on it, which brings me to something that I hear a lot from folks, which is that I wish I wouldn't have quit. And this is adults that I talk to. They would say, oh, I wish I wouldn't have quit. Or people who are struggling to know, should they let their child quit the piano? I don't know the answer to that. I think you can look for signs to see that they're really disengaged. Piano's not easy, just to be clear. It's hard. Sometimes the progress is not linear. It's frustrating. I say many choice words to my piano, but just to know that there will be ups and downs. But I think you can tell if your kid's engaged in it. You can tell if they get in the flow state of it. When I look at videos of myself at 9 or 10, even then I can see I'm really into it, even if it was difficult. So if your kid's not into it, then just having an honest conversation. You also know your kid. Some kids move from activity to activity a little bit more than others, and some kids stick with it. I definitely was a stick with it type of person. And so it's a hard thing to say, but again, if your kid never wanted to do piano in the first place, I sadly went to recitals with those kids, then they're not going to stick with it. Much better to find something that they do love. Piano, regardless, is going to help you with music. So a lot of people who took piano can go on and play other instruments. They can read music. That makes it a lot easier. And again, you can come back to it as an adult. If they have a desire to start it again, it's always available. So I think that's really, really important. Some people ask me about what type of piano should I get. I grew up playing on an upright. That was my mom's piano growing up, so it wasn't fancy. It was just a good, nice piano. I would say if your budget and space allow, get an actual piano. A keyboard is not a substitute for a piano. I know they're getting better, but for the touch of it, the expressiveness of it, a piano, you can't compare the two at all, in my opinion. So it could be that maybe for the first couple years when they're really little or when they're just starting, it matters a little bit less. But once you get a sense that they're committed to it, it's something worth investing in. People are always trying to give pianos away, so you can get on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace. Someone's always getting rid of a piano. It doesn't need to be fancy, especially when you're starting out. Just tune it, for the love of God, tune it, especially for their ear as they're developing. Just get it tuned every year or so, and you're going to be fine. I had my piano, my childhood piano. I had it for several years as an adult. My parents let me have it. And then I bought this one in 2013. So this is my baby grand. I love it. This is a dream, always a dream to have a nice piano like this. My childhood piano teachers had full grand pianos, which was just like, it was a thing. Don't let anybody ever tell you have to buy a new piano. It is a gigantic waste of money. They're not cars. They retain a lot of their value. This is a Yamaha. I love my Yamaha. The tone is beautiful. I need to clean it. Bad piano owner. The tone is beautiful. I got it used, but it sat in somebody's formal living room for 10, 15 years when their kids gave up piano after a year or two of playing it. So you can get really good deals. If you're in the Seattle area, I really recommend Prosser Piano and Organ. That's where I went. No pressure, just really open. And some of the newer pianos, a lot of them manufactured overseas, they just don't have the same tone. So do your research and find something. I would say, you know, I don't know that I would have appreciated this type of piano as a kid. What I had was just fine. So you can get lots of pianos for every budget if you look for something used. Like I said, someone's always trying to get rid of a piano. So it's not that big of a deal, but a real piano will make a big difference. The last thing I would say is just how to continue to encourage the pianist in your life. So one thing that drives me bonkers, just generally as a person, but especially when piano is concerned, people say, oh my gosh, you're so good. And that's not how I see myself as a pianist. I would say I'm okay. But I think when you understand how much there is to go, then you're just thinking, why do you think that I'm good? That you don't really understand how not good I am. So not praising the talent, this is Carol Dweck and her growth mindset, right? Not saying, oh, you're really good at piano. That sets us up to think when we struggle, oh, I must not be good at it anymore. This is really important for kids to know that, you know, it's not that you're good at piano, you're praising their character qualities. So you're praising things like the effort that they put in, the tenacity, the commitment that they have, and getting really specific, saying, wow, I really like the way that you played that passage. Or I can see that you're working really hard on your staccato, or the dynamics in that piece were really varied. So if you're not musically literate, then you can use more basic things to say, wow, you know, you've been working really hard in that piece. You can tell by the way that you're playing it how hard you've been working. I'm making this up, right? So praising the effort and what they're putting into it. If you say, oh, you're a good pianist, they'll hit the wall. We hit the wall many times as pianists. And then they'll think, well, I must not be good at this. when that's not the case. So trying to avoid praising the talent and instead praising the effort and praising the character qualities that you're seeing in them through what they're doing. It matters so much because, again, true pianists know there's no end. This is a lifelong journey, and it takes a lot of work. I think sometimes people think, oh, you just sit down and you play stuff, and sort of sometimes, but it is a lot of work, especially on hard pieces that you put into it. So when someone recognizes that you worked really hard on it, that's really meaningful. And you can see that with little ones. When you praise that in them, they get really excited because they know that they practiced really hard on that. And you can say, wow, I can tell you've been practicing. And they beam because it's like, oh, they knew, and you do. So those are my tips. That was longer than I thought it was going to be. But again, I love the piano. It brings a lot of joy to my life. It gets me de-stressed and in a flow state. That being said, piano is not for everyone. It can be very frustrating at the same time. So as you can tell, it's a very balanced thing. And so hopefully this will help you if you're thinking about learning the piano, or if you have a potential pianist in your life, or there is a pianist in your life, whether a child or an adult, to think, how do you support them on this journey? So thanks for watching. Hopefully I got some new music that you might be able to see behind me. So hopefully I'll have some new songs up on YouTube or Facebook in the near future. Thanks everyone. Bye.